Hi, I'm Trey Crowder. Welcome to the Sarah O'Connell Show.
Welcome to the Sarah O'Connell Show.
Trae, welcome to the Sarah O'Connell Show. I'm a huge fan of yours. How are you today?
I'm pretty good. I'm here at home in Burbank, California, where the wind is blowing like crazy today. So just want to throw that out there in case like a tree falls on my house or something. I apologize in advance, but I think we'll be okay.
Well, I hope you keep safe with the wind, and hopefully it's not coming from a windmill, because I'm told that they're very deadly to birds.
Yes, deadly windmills. Big problem over here in the States.
So you grew up in Tennessee, and you went to business school, and I think you worked at the U.S. Department of Energy for 6 years. What was it you originally aspired to do or be when you were growing up?
Well, actually, a comedian the whole time. I grew up in the middle of nowhere. My dad ran a video store called Crowder's Videos, a converted single wide trailer in
Amazing.
Clay County, Tennessee, where I grew up, which is extremely rural. So I always was interested in like show business or whatever. And then starting when I was like 12, it became stand-up comedy specifically. But at the same time, I'm from like a really uh again, poor rural family. No one in my family had ever graduated from college, and I always made really good grades. So it was like taken for granted that I was going to go to college and get a degree.
Right.
And I never even questioned that. I feel like a lot of teenagers feel like pressured to do that or something, so they don't want to. But I never felt that way. I always wanted to go to college, and I'm glad I went to college. But having said that, even when I was going to college and got that degree, the reason I got a master's of business was because I wanted to be able to hopefully get a pretty good job while I was starting out in stand up because I didn't want to wait tables and do the starving artist thing because I grew up
Right.
poor. So like that was the only reason I got that degree. And then as far as the job with the US Department of Energy, that's just the job that I got. I graduated from business school in 2009, which was in America not a good time to be graduating from any college, let alone business school. I applied for all kinds of jobs in all kinds of places.
Mm.
And I just happened to get a job with the US Department of Energy outside of Knoxville, Tennessee. So I moved up there for that job, and that's also where. And then when I got there, I started doing stand up because they had a comedy club there called Side Splitters, and that's where I started stand up in 2010. And then as soon as I was able to go full time in stand up, that's when I quit that job, and that took about 6 years. So that's how that all worked out. That ended up being that's an interesting place to work and
Yeah.
everything, but it wasn't. None of that was planned really. The ambition and aspiration the whole time was to do all this stuff instead.
Absolutely. And so you started doing open mic nights and stuff like that. Do you remember what your first gigs were like and what your first material was like and how people responded?
Yeah, the first, yeah, let me, my first set ever, I invited some friends of mine from work, which most comics do when they're going to do their very first set. But it also, like, when you've been doing comedy for a long time, you look back on it, you know that it's like that's kind of cheating a little bit. That's sort of stacking the deck in your favor, getting friends of yours in the crowd. But again, pretty much everybody does it. And I did that. And because of that, my first set went really well, which got me kind of hooked on it. Right. And as far as what the jokes were about, they were mostly about like, where I was from, because again, even in the state of Tennessee, like this comedy club was in Knoxville, and
Mm.
for like even within Tennessee, to people in Knoxville, my hometown is like notably backwoods, redneck. You know, it's still like different than the experience of living in Knoxville. So I joked a lot about my hometown and that type of thing. I remember I don't remember the jokes, but I had a whole bit about like moonshine and stuff like that. Talking about my mama doing pills, or just my hometown moonshine, that type of thing. But I pretty quickly started doing more. I didn't view them as political, but I like jokes about the Bible or making fun of racists or homophobes, and that sort of a little bit more like politically charged type stuff came pretty quickly to me pretty early on. And sometimes that stuff didn't go over well, depending on the crowd. It was probably more fine than a lot of people would assume it to be. Like I
Right.
feel like a lot of people would assume it to be a bigger problem than it was. But don't get me wrong, there were times where it did not fly. Where any one particular crowd was not into. They were not picking up what I was laying down up there. Like I certainly ran into that too.
And so you're known as the liberal redneck, and that kind of comes from an authentic place, right? But it's kind of your persona turned
Yeah.
up.
Yes.
How long did it take to develop your on-stage persona and decide that was the direction you were going to go in?
This is going to sound like, well, first of all, I don't know. Can we curse on here? Or do I need to not do
Sure.
that? Okay. All right. This is going to sound like bullshit probably, but it's not that part. Cause for a lot of comedians, it does take a really long time to sort of like develop your like persona or whatever. And I'm not saying I was good right out of the gate, cause I wasn't. Pretty much nobody is, but that part of it was pretty present from the very, very beginning. And I think it's because, like you said, it comes from an extremely authentic place. It is kind of, my comedic persona is kind of just me cranked up a few notches. So I didn't really have to think about that too hard. You know, I did experiment some early on with like, I did a couple of like real low energy, like ironic type sets or whatever that didn't work at all, and said, okay, that's not for me. Or I would do sillier shit here and there, like try impressions or something every now and like I've fiddled with some of that stuff,
Sure.
but nothing. I never really deviated from this general course, like from the very beginning, because it is so authentic to me, I guess.
And what kind of stereotypes and misconceptions do you like to challenge in your comedy?
Well, just the idea that disclaimer here, I'm not trying to say that when I get into talking about these stereotypes about Southerners, I'm not trying to say that they are all just complete bullshit or totally made up. There's plenty of people who fit every one of these stereotypes. My thing is just that they don't apply to all of us. So like as a white guy from the South who has a thick accent and everything, the things that always bothered me that I would make fun of or try to dispel was like, you know, I'm not a dumbass. I'm not a sister fucker. I'm not a racist. I'm not a Bible thumper. I don't hate gay people. I don't hate books. You know, you name it, those types of things. Just all the like backwards regressive stereotypes about people from where I'm from who sound like me. All of those types of things were what I was always trying to sort of skewer, if you will.
Have you got any tips for anybody just getting into stand-up comedy? As you say, you've been doing it for around about a decade now. What kind of stuff helps you?
It's really hard right now, for sure. I'll be honest with you. I don't know how anyone starts as a stand-up comedian in 2020. Well, of course, I don't know. I'm assuming you're in the UK. Obviously, you're from there. I don't know.
Right, yeah, I am, yeah.
Okay. I don't know, because we're so much worse than everyone else where COVID is concerned. I don't know exactly how it works. But like I'm saying right now, most comedy clubs in most places are closed. You know, I don't know how you go about even starting. And matter of fact, if somebody's thinking about starting as a stand-up right now, I would probably say try to think of something funny to do on the internet until the world goes back to normal, and then focus on traditional stand-up, because everything is so screwed up right now. But as far as like when things are normal, I know that it's like, I don't know, it's obvious and people don't want to hear it maybe or whatever, but there isn't really any trick to it. The only thing you can do is you just have to go and do it, and then you have to do it over and over again, and all that other stuff will work itself out. You're right. Some people like struggle with figuring out what their comedic voice or point of view or persona, however you want to put it, is. But the only way to solve that is to just keep doing it over and over and seeing what works and what doesn't. You know what I mean? I mean, that's the only advice there is. And again, also like the comedy scene, it could work so differently over there, but another like piece of practical advice for here that divides comedians sometimes. I started in Knoxville, Tennessee, and I lived in Knoxville for right at 7 years before I moved to LA 3 years ago. I was always told, usually I was 85-90% of the time, I was told as a young comic by the headliners who would come through, to stay in Knoxville until I was like good. Like what they said was get good here, get good where you're at, before you even worry about moving. Because again, over there, I don't know the rules, but over here, you need to be, you do eventually pretty much need to be in New York or LA, although that's changing a little bit now. But I mean, that's why I moved to LA, is because I feel like I needed to be here. But you don't need to be in any kind of rush to get there, though, because if you come before you're ready, then it won't work out and you'll get chewed up and spit out probably. And that's not good. It's better to stay where you are and sort of hone your skills until you're really sure that you're ready for it, and then move to the big time. That's really the only piece of like practical advice I could think of for young comics outside of just doing it and doing it repeatedly.
That's really good advice. And yeah, as you say, it's kind of weird at the moment in the UK because they keep opening everything back up, then everyone catches it again, and then they close everything back down again, and then they open it. They've done it several times. And
yeah, it's funny how that works. You know, it's almost like when everything's open back up, the virus, you know, runs wild. I don't know. I mean, but over here, like, you know, a lot of states are just open back up and they just said to hell with it and are open. But I'm in California. A lot of things still are not open here, but still, whatever. Who knows?
I discovered you through your brilliant, funny, and thought-provoking videos. Your one supporting the trans community went viral. It had millions of views. And so what made you such a sort of passionate and vocal LGBT ally?
Yeah, that one's easy to answer. My uncle is gay, my Uncle Tim, and he's openly gay, and he's my dad. My dad passed away in 2013. My dad raised me. Yeah. And my dad raised me, and Uncle Tim is his only sibling, and they were very close up until my dad died. I was always very close to my Uncle Tim, and I'm still close to my Uncle Tim. And again, he's openly gay. He's been openly gay ever since I was born. And my dad explained it to me when I was like 9 or 10 or something. And that's why I just, you know, I loved Uncle Tim, and it never mattered to me at all, him being gay. But once my dad explained to me what all that meant, then I started picking up on things, you know, around Salina. I started realizing that wasn't the opinion that everybody held as far as, and I know you mentioned the trans video. And I didn't grow up. I didn't grow up with anyone close to me who was trans, but I just, you know, having the experience with Uncle Tim just sort of set me down that path, I guess, of empathy for the entire LGBT community. It was the first thing that I ever cared about politically because it was close to me personally. People would make jokes or whatever about my Uncle Tim, or make jokes about me because of my Uncle Tim. And when I was in school, and so that, you know, it was brought to my attention early on, and it was the first thing I ever started, like, you know, pushing back on or running my mouth about. And then eventually that led to all the other classical progressive stances and whatnot. But the first one was gay rights because of my uncle. And so that's sort of how that got started.
As I mentioned, the video went viral and it led to you being on TV. I've seen you on Real Time with Bill Maher 3 times, I think. So how did things sort of change for you after that?
Oh my God, I couldn't even put it out. Like, I mean, literally everything about my life changed pretty much overnight because I put that video out. It wasn't the first, it was actually the second Liberal Redneck video I had done. The first Liberal Redneck video was the week before that, and it had gotten like 70,000 views or something, which, like, you got to understand, like I was thrilled by that. Yeah, that's why I did a second one, you know. And then that second one though went, like crazy viral, and it was kind of an overnight thing, like over the course of one night and into the next morning is when it just like completely exploded and changed everything. I was already doing stand-up. I had a manager in LA, and I had done an NBC like talent development program I'd gotten into in New York, and I did some comedy festivals. So I was doing okay, but like nothing really special. And I still had the day job, and I still lived in Knoxville, Tennessee. And then that happening led to a book deal, my first TV deal, led to TV appearances. It led to the touring and doing shows around the country and everything. And which all of that allowed me to quit the job. Within 6 months, I moved out here and everything. So, I mean, it like just it changed everything like that. I mean, that's the power of the internet, you know, like. Yeah. I alluded to it earlier saying you had to be in New York or LA, although that has changed some. And that's what I meant. Like, because of the internet, you don't have to get noticed or to make like a splash. But for certain things, like I really want to get a TV show made and on the air and everything. And if you don't have to, but if you want to pursue that avenue specifically, it's much better to be physically in Los Angeles. But the internet has opened things up for everybody. And I mean, gave me my career for sure. So
I'm so happy for the success you've had, and you absolutely deserve it. And I can't wait to see where you go next, and what stuff you create. Can you tell me who your comedy inspirations are? Who makes you laugh?
yeah, my first, well, I don't know if it's my very first comedy inspiration, but I think I said earlier from the age of about 12 is when I started wanting to be a stand-up. And I say 12 because I was 12 in 1998, and that's when Chris Rock's Bigger and Blacker came out, which was like the first thing that sort of like directly influenced me to want to be a stand-up comedian. So because of that, Chris Rock's always been my personal favorite comic and still is. He's number one at the top of my all-time list. And then among the others near the top are Dave Chappelle, Bill Burr, Louis C.K. Right now, I think Nikki Glaser is one of the funniest people out there. I love Sarah Silverman. I love John Mulaney. There's, I know for a fact I'm blanking on so many who I think are awesome. I think Nate Bargatze's awesome. I think Theo Von's great. Tom Segura, Christina P's great too. There's a whole, there's so many super funny comedians out there right now. But yeah, growing up, it was those guys, and Eddie Izzard, one of my absolute favorites growing up as a kid.
That's a very good list. I remember Chris Rock's show coming out in the 1990s. It was huge, wasn't it?
Oh yeah, it was very, very big deal. Chris Rock in the 90s was just like the pinnacle for me of like stand up. Although, again, Dave Chappelle has certainly approached it. Chappelle's a genius too, but yeah, I don't know. I always liked, there's plenty of great comics out there who I'm a big fan of. I think they're awesome who don't do this, but all of my personal favorite comics were always, and still are, the ones who, have some kind of like message or are talking about some kind of real thing, talking about issues or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to get my head up my ass about it, but that's just the type of, to me, that's one of the biggest purposes of comedy is to do that kind of thing, shine a light on societal issues, talk about things people don't want to talk about, all of that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
That's like a mission statement of comedy for me. So all of my favorites are people who do that kind of thing, even though, like I said, there are all kinds of comics who don't really traffic in all of that at all, who are also brilliantly fun. Like I think Jim Gaffigan is absolutely wonderful and hilarious, and he doesn't really do any of that, but my personal favorites are always those types.
And so you started collaborating with Corey and Drew in around about 2016, I think, with the WellRED comedy tour. How long have you known them, and why did you decide to collaborate?
Well, yeah, really it was me going viral and getting the opportunity to tour and stuff that's how that happened, because we had been friends and had done shows and stuff and other things like that together for years. Even by 2016, it was like, trying to think. By 2016, it was we'd probably known each other and had done stuff together for like 4 years, probably, so it's like 8 or 9 years we've been friends now. But the reason we got to be friends and we started doing things together, like booking shows together, doing like sketches and stuff together, was because of the fact that we were starting comedy in the South, and we were all three kind of a different version of the same type of thing, which is to say, we all individually always felt like, growing up as comedy fans, there were there were basically two types of American comedians from the South. There were the ones who like were from the South, but dropped their accent and didn't really talk about it. And you wouldn't even really know if you didn't hear them mention, hey, I grew up in Georgia. And a good example of that is David Cross, who's, I love David Cross, but David Cross no one thinks of David Cross as a Southern comedian, but David Cross is from Georgia, right? So he's like one version. And then the other version is, Foxworthy, Larry the Cable Guy, the blue collar guys, the ones who like, it was just the like redneck humor thing. And it always seemed like you kind of had to be one or the other if you were a stand-up comic from the South. And all three of us independently of each other had kind of decided like, why can't you be both of those things or neither of those things? Do you know what I mean? Like I can look and act and sound like a very stereotypically Southern comedian, but without having any of the stereotypical like jokes, or without saying the things that you would expect me to say. that's sort of what I was going for. And it's sort of what they were going for when we all met, which we sort of bonded over that and became friends. And we would talk after shows and stuff. We'd drink beers and talk about how great it would be to be able to tour one day and all this stuff, like daydreaming type stuff, you know? So when those videos went viral and it became like a reality, it was a very natural thing to be like, hey, you know, do y'all want to give this a shot? And then we just started doing it, and we've sort of collaborated ever since. We all have things that we do on our own. You know what I mean? We're not like a full blown comedy troupe or anything, but we do often collaborate and have the whole time and still do.
You do indeed. And you mentioned earlier you wrote a book together, a liberal redneck manifesto. I've been listening to the audiobook version. It's a lot of fun. And I recommend that too, because you're actually reading it out loud and stuff. What's that actually like to record? And for anyone that hasn't had the pleasure of reading it yet, what is it about?
Yeah, the book, I'm glad you said that about listening to it. We often suggest to people, if you are going to consume the book in any way, our primary suggestion is, if you can, do it by listening to it, because it is us that reads it, and we feel like our voices and accents and dialect and stuff is pretty integral to a lot of the stuff in there. Having said that, if you don't traffic in audiobooks, you'd rather just read it, that's fine too. But as far as what the book is, it's kind of like our sort of reconciling of everything that people think about the South, or everything that kind of defines the South, to both Southerners and people from the outside of it. So what I mean is, it's on a chapter by chapter basis, and every chapter is concerns like some big Southern stereotype or some big aspect of Southern culture, or whatever you want to say, positive and negative. So meaning, like, there's a chapter on food, because food is a huge thing in the South. There's a chapter on music, because a lot of America's best music is Southern in origin, right? So those are good things. There's a chapter on like family relationships and things like that. But also there's chapters on racism, opioids, the church, guns, whatever. And in each of those chapters, we just try to kind of like honestly, but also, you know, where appropriate, humorously kind of deconstruct it all. But like, kind of, this is what you think. This is how you think this works in the South. Here's how it actually works, or how it actually is. And also, again, where appropriate, here is how we think we should and could do better in the South in the future, you know? And like I said, we were very brutally honest about a lot of that stuff. I didn't feel like we really, like, you know, sugarcoated anything or cut any corners or anything like that, where it came to talking about, like, you know, the history of slavery, Confederacy, the flag, the Klan, whatever, any of that type of stuff. We didn't like shy away from any of it. So yeah, it's wild, because that was like, I mean, 4 years ago isn't that long, but with everything that's happened and, you know, my life in 4, that feels like just it feels like a lifetime ago when we wrote that book. But I mean, yeah, we're really proud of it.
Do you think you might do another one now that things have obviously changed so much?
Yeah, yes, but not like, I don't have any specific plans for any kind of book right now, but I do think, I mean, you know, I can be a little pretentious and whatnot. And yeah, I feel like odds are good at some point or another, I will write another book. Who knows what it'll be about? May end up being more of an actual manifesto written in a cabin in the woods if I lose my mind, you know, who knows? But I'm sure I'll write another book at some point, with or without the guys. Well, I appreciate that. But yeah, I don't have any specific plans for it right now. So we'll see.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because I guess the stereotype, as you say, is that everyone is kind of a Republican, but there's loads of liberal, progressive people in the South as well that aren't necessarily represented enough in the media.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, there's a couple reasons for that. First of all, I think a major part of it is any kind of electoral map that comes out in America. Pretty much the entire South is just a big swath of red. Every single state is red. But in each individual state, the ratio of red votes to blue votes is something like 60-40, 55-45, or even closer, 52-48. It's not like 80 red, 20 blue or whatever. And, you know, when you put all those people together, all those blue votes, those 40% in Mississippi and 45% in North Carolina or whatever, and you put all those blue votes together in all the southern states, I mean, that's millions of people who vote the other direction in every single election. But when you look at the map, it's just all red. And I think that contributes a lot to the perception of it. Also, the city, like a lot of the people, going back to what I was saying earlier, a lot of the people that are from the South and are even like proud to be from the South or proud to be from the state of Tennessee or wherever, whatever Southern state, if they are like the more progressive type and whatnot, they're not like, I'm trying to think of how to put this. There are plenty of people who are the same thing that I am, meaning like they're from like a small town and they're liberal and whatnot. Right. And you talk to them and you wouldn't expect it. But the type of people you might ever see on TV or on the news or anything are probably people in the cities somewhere, like in Nashville or something. And people don't internalize those people as Southerners when they see them, because they don't sound like hicks or like country people or like rednecks or whatever. You know what I'm saying? They just sound like a regular person because they are a regular person, but like they don't get counted in the sort of mental image that people have of places like that. They get like sort of put to the side as a different kind of thing. You know what I mean? Like, oh yeah, there's people like that there, of course, but those are like the people that in the coffee shops in Nashville. That doesn't represent Tennessee. You know what I mean? Which like, I've always been bothered by why not? Like, why shouldn't that count? Or why don't I count? Like, because I know from talking to all kinds of people, people don't even mean to do this, but they like do this thing where that, like I said, they like pull me out of it and like count me as a different thing. Where it's like, no, I know you're from the rural South. You know, I know you're like from there, but you're not like the rest of them. So you're like different. You're like me. So that's why you don't count as one of them or whatever. And it's like, well, no, I mean, I should count though. Like when I should count in the like, painting that picture of what the South is for everybody else, and not just me, but people like me too. And then like, like people think of the South and they don't think of Outkast, you know what I mean? But like they should. Like Outkast got on stage at the Source Awards, wherever, and they're the ones who, they famously said the South got something to say, and they talk about being from the South all the time, but people don't think about them when they think about the American South. They don't think about people like me, even though those people exist, and I'm rambling badly about this now, but I hope I'm making a little bit of sense.
But I've really enjoyed just researching this interview and listening to the audio book and, all your previous work as well, just learning more about the South in a way that I guess hasn't been that accessible, I felt before.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I'll give you an example that just popped into my head. I met this lady out here in LA who was like an industry person, like a show business person, and she was super, super nice. I had like a couple of interactions with her. And again, I liked her. She was very nice to me. But one thing we talked about was she had an 18-year-old daughter who was, and this is like a lady who has been successful in show business. So presumably this 18-year-old daughter is, led a pretty comfortable, privileged life, right? Also, the lady is white. I should say that. So we're talking about 18-year-old white girl from a well-to-do family in Hollywood, right? And this 18-year-old daughter was about to start college at this like private university in Memphis, Tennessee called Rhodes University, which is like a really good school, and it's private. And it's like fancy and everything, And her daughter was about to start college there in the fall, and she was like terrified. Like she was so scared that her daughter was like going to be going to school in the South. Like, and she wanted to talk to me about that because she was so worried, you know what I mean? And I was like, well, look, putting aside just the issues that any young woman runs into, while putting aside the male female part of it, you know what I mean? How shitty men are and then predator, whatever, all that type of stuff. Like we're talking about just her being in the South right now. You don't have anything to worry about, I promise you, because she's like a rich white girl going to a rich white college in a city, a big city in the South. Like she's not going to run into any Klan members. You know what I mean? She's not going to have any, it's not going to be like that. Like she won't have, as long as she don't just take off driving 2 hours out into the heart of Mississippi just to see what it's like she's not going to have any kind of run-ins with anything like what you are picturing in your head when you think about it. You know what I mean? It won't be anything like that. You have nothing to worry about. And I mean, I'm a parent too. I get just being worried, but it was just, the whole thing was just so silly to me because it was so far off base than the actual reality of the situation this girl was like walking into, but that's how, it's how people are. Like she was asking me, the same lady was asking me about like, how bad institutional racism is in the South. And I was just like, why are you asking me about it when the LAPD is right there? You know what I mean? Like ask Rodney King about the institutional racism in the South. You know what I mean? Like that's part of what's always bothered me so much about it is I'm not trying to act like it's not a problem in the South. It is, but the rest of America uses the South as a scapegoat to act like it's not a problem where they live. And that's what bothers me. Like institutional racism is a problem in Southern California too. Like deep, deep blue Southern California has a problem with institutional racism, but they act like they don't because the South, that's where all the racists are, and that's the part that bothers me about it. I will say, we've been going through a whole lot of that this year in America with the Black Lives Matter movement heating back up again. And I will say that like, I don't know how people could possibly still have that same attitude after all of that this year. Like, like I've been to Black Lives Matter protests in Southern California and they're talking about the fact that it exists here. I don't know how people can just ignore that type of thing anymore and act like it is only in the South the way that I feel like they used to, given everything that's happened, which I think is a good thing because maybe it can lead to like actual change eventually. But I digress.
Now, you've also got a podcast which is available on all good podcasting platforms, and there's 191 episodes of it so far. I regrettably haven't listened to all of them yet, but I've listened to a good chunk of them. And so how often do you record each episode, and are you sort of doing it online at the moment? Are you able to still get together and record those?
The last part of your question, no, we are not. We're doing them exclusively online ever since the pandemic started. Yeah, it's called the WellRED, and that's WellRED, WellRED podcast. We actually just recorded this week's episode right before I started with you. Actually, we typically record on Mondays. It comes out every Wednesday. We used to do it in the same room together because we toured together. So like we could just go into Corey or my hotel room with a recorder and and some microphones and do it all together, which I thought was good. And I mean, we like doing it that way, but like, what are you going to do? Cause like me and Drew both lived out here in LA, but Corey lives in Georgia. And again, it wasn't a problem when we were touring because we would see each other almost every weekend. So it was fine. But now with everything being locked down and us being like not centrally located, it just kind of is what it is. We have no choice but to do it over Zoom, but I mean, we're still having fun with it.
And the other day too, I was delighted to find you on Amazon Prime in the UK. The three of you went to a gay naturists retreat. And did you know in advance that people wouldn't have any clothes on, or was that genuinely a surprise when you got there?
Yeah, we knew we were going to here's how that, I'll tell you the behind the scenes of how that came together, that video. Okay. It's wild that's on Amazon Prime. I didn't even really know that, I don't think, because it was a Funny or Die thing that we did. We got booked to do stand-up at that retreat. It's called GNI, Gay Naturist International. I'm sure they won't mind me plugging them. Poor choice of word, maybe, but you know what I mean. Anyway, it's a big gay nudist group that's existed for a long time, and they have a gathering, a get together every year in the Poconos, and they've done it for a long time. And every year they have some kind of entertainment. It's a whole weekend, and on Saturday night they have some kind of booked entertainment they have. And that year that you're talking about, me and Corey and Drew were the booked entertainment for it, and we knew that like well in advance. But at some point, the idea got brought up. I think it was by our manager at the time. Maybe it was like, hey, what about we were talking to Funny or Die about certain idea, what things we could try to do or whatever. And I think it was her. She was like, let's pitch them on just bringing a camera crew up there and sort of filming it. Of course, given that GNI is okay with that, and just seeing what we kind of get out of it. So that's what we did. And then what ended up coming out of it was the video that you saw. But that was a awesome time and an awesome experience. Those guys were super cool. They were more than down with it. And yeah, that was a good time. It's weird because again, that's another one that I know it's not that long ago in the big scheme of things, but that just feels like so long ago to me. And but it has randomly come up recently. Drew was talking about the other day on an unrelated topic, but it's weird because I hadn't thought about it in a while until just a few days ago, and then you bring it up again. So funny how that works. But yeah, that was a fun time.
And if anyone's looking for more of a well-read comedy fix, we'll show you in Lexington's on Spotify as well from 2019. So you can listen to that.
Yes.
Really enjoyed that.
Yes, it's a comedy album. Yeah, we recorded a show and put it out as a comedy album. Yeah, live in Lexington. WellRED, live in Lexington. I think that's right.
How have things, obviously touring and stuff's been affected by coronavirus, but are you still able to do any sort of gigs at all at the moment? Have you got things planned for next year, or is it up in the air at the moment?
Well, again, everything's just such a shit show over here specifically. It's been so hard to deal with. I haven't been on stage since March, since right before the pandemic kicked off.
Right.
Me and the guys have done one Zoom-based comedy show, which I actually thought was a lot of fun, but I feel like you need to look at it as like, look at it as a different thing. You know what I mean? It's not like, it ain't the same thing as like live stand-up in a club or whatever, but the thing that it is also fun. Like we had a good time with that, and we will probably do more of those as well. But so far we've only done one. And as far as physically touring, we haven't done any at all. We've pushed multiple shows back and then had to push them back further because things didn't get better. You know, I mean, like in March, we had a bunch of shows lined up and we rescheduled them all. And at the time we rescheduled them for like August, September, because like it feels naive and silly now in retrospect. But at the time in March, me included, we were all like, oh, August, September. Oh, we'll have this way under control by then. This won't be a problem by then. It'll be fine. And obviously that's the opposite of what happened. So we ended up having to push them out again. And we're in a similar situation now. We're like, yeah, we've got some coming up in early 2021 and, you know, starting to put them on the books, but like, you know, who knows if they'll actually stay there, if we'll actually be able to do it. I just feel like it's impossible to say right now.
Yeah, because we don't really have a point of reference for how long a pandemic lasts at this point. Obviously, there was one about 100 years ago, I think, but technology's moved on and it's different kind of pandemic and stuff like that, so we really don't know. Also, I must ask, have you got any plans? Would you like to come and perform in the UK in the future?
I would absolutely love to. That would be a dream to do that. It's been brought up, but I feel like it's like it's a thing where agents and stuff have, you know, felt like not confident enough that it would be like, you know, financially feasible yet, given the, you know, sort of any presence that I have over there. Which, you know, thanks for interviewing me, by the way. But
I'm a huge fan.
I would love to come over there and do shows. I've always been, you know, I'll confess it. I've always been a little bit of an Anglophile for whatever reason. Just always been into everything y'all got going on over there. I'm a fan of it, but I've never visited. Again, I grew up poor. I've only ever been to Canada and Mexico, the only other countries I've ever been to. Never been to Europe in any capacity, and the UK is at the top of my list. It's the first place I'll go to whenever I'm finally able to. But yeah, I would love to come over there, but there again, don't have any specific plans right now as to when that might happen, but hopefully before too long.
Yeah, fingers crossed. And you also work with Mark Agee as well. You have a show, Evening Skews. So what can you tell people about that? Where can they watch it? What is it about? Yeah,
Evening Skews is a live political podcast that me and Mark Agee, he's a former journalist and current comedy writer, and it's about like U.S. politics, current events. It's every Tuesday and Thursday at 5 Pacific time. So I mean, over there it's like after midnight probably. That's the live version of it though, but every episode stays up on all my socials, Facebook and YouTube. You don't have to watch it live, but we do it live, and we just talk about the latest headlines and political, you know, tomfoolery that has gone on over here, and sort of make fun of it and try to keep each other and everyone listening from, you know, being too depressed or freaked out about the current state of things, if possible, because it's pretty rough, but, you know, gives us plenty to talk about at least. So, yeah.
And you've been attached to a few sitcoms as well. There was one with Fox TV and ABC as well, I think, at the moment. Is there anything you can tell me about any of those?
Well, yeah, the two that you mentioned are, they didn't make it. They didn't make it through the development process. That's what happens. It's like, it's frustrating because, the way the industry works out here and the way the things are announced too is like not representative of how things actually work. And what I mean is, like, it was like public information. It was in like Deadline Hollywood and stuff like that.
Right.
When I sold these shows to these networks. But what those articles don't say, or what they don't make clear to people who are not in the industry, don't recognize it, is like there are still so many steps you have to go through after that process to actually get a fully made TV show on the air somewhere. And if you can get rejected at any one of those intervals, and then once you're rejected, like, that's it, it's over. It might go to some other network and start over, which is what I have done a few times.
Yeah.
But then it ultimately got passed on. Now I mean, at this point, if you're talking about every different version of, a sitcom that I have, like, either attempted or I am currently attempting, because I have some right now that I'm trying to, get made. I mean, it's probably like 9 or something.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, and 5 of them, didn't get on the air. And then I've got, roughly 3 right now that I'm like, in development on, that I'm going to try to get set up somewhere and airing. But I've been going through that process with all these different versions for 4 years now and haven't had any luck so far. But that's the other thing too, is that's completely normal. Like, every network, they might buy like 20 or 30 shows. And then, let's say they buy 20 shows. It's probably more than that, but let's say they buy 20 shows. That means they get 20 scripts that are written. And from the 20 scripts that are written, they might make like 6 or 7 pilots. And of the 6 or 7 pilots that they film, they'll pick 1 or 2 to put on the air. Right. So your odds at any given moment, even after making a sale, are, 5% or something like that. And that's just it's just a numbers game. It's just the reality of it. So, I mean, I'm not discouraged or anything, but yeah, it's a laborious process and it's hard to do. And it's still ongoing. So I don't have any kind of specific details about, like, hey, I got this coming out this fall on this channel and here's what it's about. I don't have that, but I'm still actively pursuing all that and remain hopeful. So we'll see.
Yeah, best of luck with that. And I'd love to see one of you or the 3 of you in a sitcom. And I think it'd be a lot of fun. So.
All right. Well, I appreciate it.
You're so busy. You've also been a producer on a new documentary, Inherent Good, which is about universal basic income, and it also has former presidential candidate Andrew Yang in there as well. What can you tell us about that, and where will we be able to see it? Is it online?
Working with distributors right now to get it out on like Amazon Prime and other streaming platforms. It's not yet, but should be before too long. But that's a work in progress. It as of now, it's just like special limited screenings for like festival eligibility and all this sort of like kind of nebulous stuff that, I'll be frank with you, I don't really understand. I was a producer on it, but all of this this whole part of it, the sort of like marketing and distribution part of it, is not really my forte. So, but I know that right now, the only way to see it for now is these, like special online screening events and whatnot that are posted on the website, which is inherentgood.com. And then once we secure distribution and all that, it will eventually be out on Amazon Prime and all those other, wherever else you can find things, streaming. But it's a documentary about the need for universal basic income and just the concept of universal basic income, in America. And a big chunk of it takes place in my hometown, which has been ravaged economically. And it's sort of a human interest angle on the argument for why we need that, or even if you don't buy that we need it right now, that we will need it at some point in the future, which I do believe to be true. So yeah, it's one of those things where like, people, even when listen to this interview to this point, probably won't be too surprised by what I'm about to say, but it's like, even though I'm a comedian, that documentary is not comedic, because these are all real people and real stories. And you get into it and watch it, you'll see it's like, not really the place to be cracking a lot of jokes, because a lot of it is, sad and dramatic and real and heavy, but very well done, and also, necessary, in my opinion. So yeah, I mean, I'm very proud of how it turned out also.
Can you tell me what else you might be working on? Are you writing more comedy? Have you got any plans sort of going into 2021 that you can reveal?
Well, again, I mean, I've referenced it offhand, but I've always got, a couple of like TV projects in certain stages of development, and right now is no different. But again, I can't really talk about the specifics of any of them, but couple with me and Corey and Drew, and then another one, just me, just trying to get a TV show made and on the air, but who knows how it'll actually turn out. But that's like a big focus of mine. And then also evening Skews with Mark, and trying to sort of take that. We kind of started that on a whim as like a pandemic project, but we want to kind of take that to the next level if possible. So we're going to be looking at that more seriously. I'm always writing and doing the internet videos, every week or 2 weeks or so, just depending on how the news cycle goes. And I'm still going to keep doing that. And I'm always writing stand-up material and everything too. There will be another virtual show that in the near future that I would love for people to check out, although we don't have the specifics yet. I think it'll be in December sometime. But as far as like hitting the road and doing that whole thing, it's like I said, I feel like that's kind of out of my hands. Certainly want to do it, but we'll just, like a lot of people, just kind of waiting on this to blow over in a lot of ways, and things to get back to normal so we can really dive in on it. But I've got plenty of things to keep me busy and plenty of irons in the fire for sure.
Everyone's thinking about and talking about the US election, November 3rd. What are your thoughts on that? And any messages for people that may not have voted yet or are still somehow on the fence, if that's possible?
Okay. So, first of all, what are my thoughts on it? I'm so gun shy over the last election still, like I think a lot of American liberals are, meaning like, I'm not gonna lie, I was both making videos telling people they needed to take Donald Trump more seriously, but also, even while I was doing that, internally I was like, yeah, but at the end of the day, there's no way he's gonna actually win, right? I didn't believe it. I just didn't. And I got punched in the mouth like a lot of us did. So I'm still like, I'm just so wary of having any kind of confidence about this forthcoming election. Every kind of measure or poll or everything right now seems to point towards Joe Biden winning. But anybody that followed it the last time knows that all of our polls over here said Hillary Clinton was going to win last time too.
Right.
My understanding is as I understand it, the polls are even more emphatic this time, but still, I'm too wary to go out there and be like, yeah, we got it. We got this under control. We're going to win. It's going to be okay. I certainly hope that happens, but I'm, like I said, I'm too gun shy to confidently predict it. If you put a gun to my head and made me predict right now what's going to happen, I would predict that Joe Biden will win, but I'm not by any means confident or resting on my laurels or anything like that. Not to mention the fact that even if he does win, there's a whole bunch of other shit that we still got to get through in this country after that before anything could possibly, hopefully return to normal with him in place. You know what I mean? As far as the transition of power goes, or Trump not accepting the results, I mean, who knows what's going to happen? I'm so anxious about it, like a lot of us are, but whatever. At the same time, very ready to get there and get it done one way or the other. As far as the second part of your question, what to say to people who haven't voted yet, if you're just a person who intends to vote but hasn't voted yet, please just go do it. Make the time and go do it if you can. Like, voting early is the way to go. However you can to go about doing it, just do it right now. And then as far as what I would have to say to people that are still on the fence, I've talked before recently, like I literally can't wrap my mind around a person who is genuinely undecided at this point. I don't know how that person exists, but I know apparently they do. And I guess what I would say to them is just look around you and assess your situation and ask yourself the question, how much better are things in my life right now than they were 4 years ago? And I think if you're being honest with yourself and you live in this country, the answer is going to be ain't shit better. Most of it is worse. And so what does that tell you? And follow your heart.
It's very good advice. I think the best thing to do is to ignore the polls. As you say, last time it predicted Hillary Clinton would win. I think it's just going to take everybody and every ounce of energy and motivation to go out and vote if you can. Trump's been talking a lot about trying to discredit mail-in votes and all that kind of thing, setting up in case he fails, I think.
Yes.
And then there's the Electoral College again, how that's going to come into play. And there's lots of stuff up in the air, but I'm sending lots of love and luck to all my friends in America at the moment, and fingers crossed.
Yeah, well, absolutely. We appreciate that. We're gonna need all that luck, I think. But yeah.
You can have it. I mean, I think the UK's kind of run out of it at the moment, but if there's any left, you're welcome to it. Now, there's a question I ask all of my guests, which is, can you tell me a fun fact about you, something we may not know? It could be a party trick or anything like that.
Let me see. Fun fact about me that people may not know. If people have followed me before, let me give a disclaimer before I get into this. I'm not saying I do any of these particularly well. Okay. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm a big fan of accents to the point that I don't know if it's because I have a thick accent of my own, but I will, like, sometimes I'll just randomly talk in other accents for no reason. And that's, everything from a Boston accent, pretending like I'm from Boston, talking like that, or more of a New York tough guy type of thing, from Brooklyn, that sort of thing, or sometimes lately I've been doing this sort of, I call it Scottish, but I'm not sure how appropriate it is, how accurate it is, but that's why I call it. Or I did the video and I did like a sort of thick Melania Trump, like Russian, Eastern European type of thing. Yeah. And then inappropriate ones like Jamaican man. I could do that one too, just for fun. My wife used to think it was really weird, but she's kind of just gotten over it at this point. She just accepts it. I'm in the kitchen, just kind of talking to the food I'm cooking in some random accent, but I've just always thought it was fun to talk different, I guess. Having said that, my accent is 100% real, just so people know. Like sometimes whenever that comes up, or I do some other accent, I'm worried it's going to make people think that mine is fake. Because I've gotten accused of that so many times, you wouldn't believe. People still don't believe that it's real. But this,
your accent.
It's 100. My accent is 100% real, but I do like to play around with other ones too.
Right. True story. When I was 5, my teacher sent me to a speech therapist because they said I wasn't communicating properly. And so I go there and they asked, my mum, is my dad Irish? And she said, yeah. And it turned out I was just speaking with an Irish accent for some reason. I've never been to Ireland, but I'd picked up my dad's Irish accent until the age of 5. I was apparently Irish. So, yeah.
Yeah, and everybody else around you was like, "What's wrong with her? What's going? Something's wrong with her mouth. We need to get her mouth looked at. She talks weird."
Sort of, if I'm around Irish family or something, I just start picking it up, and it just happens.
Yeah, I do that too. That's something that people don't realize. My accent is real, but also this is not this is the this is the reined in version of it. Now that again, but I don't do any of that consciously. It's like you said, like when I go home, or even if my phone rings and it's somebody from back, my mama calls me or something, I pick it up, my accent will get thicker. Or if I get angry, my accent gets thicker. Or if I get drunk, my accent gets thicker. Things like that. But this is kind of like a baseline, it gets so much thicker than this. And it used to be so much thicker all the time up until I, left my hometown and moved away and, that type of thing. But growing up in Salina, it was even thicker than it is now by a lot.
So my final question to you is, have you got any messages for people watching the Sarah O'Connell Show and your fans around the world? Despite
everything, I still remain ultimately hopeful that we are not all going to die in the near future. So I truly believe that. I really think we're going to get through all this and come out the other side and be okay. And maybe I'm telling myself that so I can sleep at night, but either way, I do believe it. So I'll tell it to you too. We're going to be all right. Hope will prevail.
So Trae Crowder, thank you so much for your time today. I've loved talking to you.
Likewise. Yeah. Thanks for having me.
And I love all of your comedy and your videos too. So everyone, please go seek them out and listen to the podcast and the audio book and all that good stuff. And hopefully get to see you live in the UK before not too long.
Yeah, I hope so. From your lips to the fake Lord's ears, Sarah. That's what I hope so.
Thank you to everybody watching at home. Be sure to share, subscribe, give this video a big thumbs up, and leave lots of lovely comments. I'll see you all again soon for another episode of the Sarah O'Connell Show. Bye.
Bye. Oh, that was good. Thanks. Like I said, thanks for having me. It was fun.